first Ironman was Ironman Chattanooga, and Crowy ended up winning that day, and he was sitting in the recovery area when I came through. Probably been there quite a while, but you know, he's like, "Yay, how'd it go?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, it was the first one, it was good." He's like, "Oh, that's good, you know, what were your splits?" And I said, "Well, I ran a 3 flat and swam this and biked that, whatever." And he's like, "You ran a 3 flat in your first shot?" I mean, it's like, yeah, I mean, you could do something in this sport. I've always had a really good relationship with my dad, and one of the things he taught me at a young age was how to set goals. And you know, I came from a wrestling background. I wrestled up into college until I had a fairly significant injury that kind of derailed that. And my dad was always, you know, a part of that journey. But when I was 16, I went to a wrestling camp and was challenged by one of my mentors there to make a list of 50 goals for the next 10 years. And for whatever reason, I don't really know why, but finishing an Ironman triathlon was one of those goals. And that sheet of paper was something that I kept with me for 10 years. I grew up in a small town in Minnesota called West Concord. I grew up 5 miles outside of the town. It was about 500 people. Growing up, I definitely was an active kid. I spent most of my time either on the farm, working at my grandpa's farm, or working for my dad, working at my uncle's shop, or just, yeah, being outside. I wasn't definitely somebody that wanted to be inside very often. I got started running when I was really young because it was a way to spend time with my dad. My dad would come home from work, and he was like to do some local 5 and 10K type things, and so he would go out and go running, and he would take me on his warm-up with me, drop me off, and then go and do his actual run. And you know, by 4th or 5th grade, I was running the whole run with him, and then by 5th or 6th grade, I would drop him off after my warm-up. I've definitely been fortunate enough to have a lot of good influences in my life. You know, I talk about my dad a lot, but you know, I've you know, had a great relationship with my mom. She was at pretty much every event that I had. I've had a lot of men in my life who've, you know, influenced me in many different positive ways. But yeah, I've always just connected the most with my dad. Just a lot of people who showed me how to work hard, stay humble, and you know, set goals. And you know, I think those are the 3 things that I was taught and had just been drilled in by example by so many people as I was growing up. My first experience on the Big Island was definitely where I fell in love with the sport and kind of thought that I had found my new hobby. I was nowhere in the mix at the front during that race. I just really enjoyed the atmosphere, really enjoyed the environment. I love the grind. I love the day in, day out, going through the process, finding out how I can get ready to push myself and put myself in that very dark place. And I've been there a couple times. It's scary to go there. It sometimes doesn't turn out well when you do. But I think in Kona, my first year, was the first time in the triathlon sense that I've found myself in that spot. and I loved every second of it. The trajectory, I guess, accelerated pretty quickly. The second year, I started doing pretty well in some races, and then by the third year, I had earned the right to, I guess, call myself a professional in any ways. And my first few years as a quasi-pro, as I was teaching, were pretty tough. I was able to handle the full-time job and then, training to be an elite triathlete. But it was really tough on Ash and I because I was training a lot and not being home a lot. And when I was home, it was on the trainer, or it wasn't. I wasn't being present, and so that was tough.
It sounds like you were heavily involved in the decision-making process of Matt pursuing triathlon full-time. Can you describe your role in that and what considerations went into it?
Yeah, so when Matt decided to go full in, as he says, he was moonlighting as a professional triathlete and was a full-time faculty member 6 months from tenure. It was a hard decision. That was how we had really planned our whole life out to be. We had planned this academic career together, and that we were going to just, make our way up the university ranks, and God obviously had other plans for us, and it was a tough decision, but it was the right decision. In some ways I was sad, just sad that we weren't going to be bumping into each other at work anymore, but I was so proud and so happy that he was leaving what felt safe and comfortable, and just really chasing after his goals and dreams, and that's what he was teaching his students all along, and so it made sense.
Was there any point in that process where you thought he wouldn't make it?
No, there wasn't at all. I knew he was gonna make it. It was gonna be hard to get there, right? That first year was really, really rough. But for me, it wasn't about winning races or, always getting the best sponsorships. It was about really pursuing what God's plan and path was for him. And it was evident, who's 9 years old and watches the world championships on TV, and then when they're 16 makes a list that says, I'm gonna go to the world championships someday, and then becomes a professional triathlete. That doesn't happen.
It took a while for me after I walked away from the classroom to trust myself that I had made the right choice. Obviously had a string of bad races the end of 2015 and into 2016. After I started at the tail end of 2016, got into a better headspace, got the body healthy again and the mind healthy again, and I think my last 4 races of that year went 4th, 3rd, 2nd, and then ended with a win. And that was a huge sigh of relief because, I had got my first win at a 70.3, and up to that point, I couldn't make any money in a 70.3 because I was coming so far from behind out of the water that, there just wasn't enough real estate on the run to catch up. And so, going those 4 races at a shorter distance, which I hadn't found success yet then, really kind of was, it allowed me to take a breath and, kind of trust that everything was going to be okay. Pursuing your dreams is something that everybody is going to tell you to do, right? It's a scary thing, and yeah, I think it's great if you're able to do that, but it comes with some risk. And I think if you're willing to accept the possible consequences of, having, there's been times where it was really tight for us and put a lot of stress on us, and thankfully I've been able to have some good races at times when it mattered, but not everybody is going to have that fortune. But I wouldn't have done it any other way. My wife and I knew what the risks were. We accepted those risks, and it's been a great ride. I always want to be thought of somebody who's just out there trying to be the best he can, working as hard as he can to get the best result possible. I have very high goals in the sport. I haven't achieved all of them yet. I've achieved a couple of them, but there's a few more big ones that I am working towards taking down. And I had a stable job as a college professor. I was just finishing up the tenure process, so it had been a safe job for life, but I pivoted and chased this dream so I can look back when it's all said and done and know if I had what it takes to be a world champion, to win these major races, rather than look back and wonder what if.